We are standing here in the harbor of Påskalvik. It's December the 13th, Lucia. And a long time ago, 2009, the adventure started here in the harbor of Påskalvik. I'm standing here with Riley, my wife, and you were not with us the first leg of the trip.
No, I unfortunately wasn't. I was back in Canada working and got to watch from a distance. But it wasn't long before I joined you back for the next leg after the first.
Yes!
Let's go sailing!
Knappt i bild. Jag är ju lite ovan. Precis köpt en kamera för det här ändamålet. Och den här kameran kommer följa med hela resan till Karlshamn. Nej, vi ska väl längre än så. Och vi har tjocka långt där ute, upptäckte matrosbejan. Och
Den håller på att brytas upp.
ja, det gör det nog. Och så är det en massa båtar i gästhamnar helt stiltje. Så vi ska ro till Utklippan. För Utklippan är första målet idag. Klockan är 5:30 på morgonen och vi väntar på att mamma och pappa kommer över. De ska följa med till Bornholm eller Tyskland, vi får se. Så här ser det ut i Påskalvikshamnen och Freedom kommer att komma tillbaka om några år kanske. Kattens lag.
I had just turned 30. The evening before we sailed, we made a combined birthday/goodbye party. Freedom with crew was leaving for an unknown number of years. During the same day, I welcomed my crew for this stretch.
I asked Christian Wiberg and Per Hjelmberg if they would like to join Freedom, and they both said yes.
Kalle asked me if I wanted to join him on his first leg of his epic journey a couple of months earlier, and of course I said yes. I wouldn't miss this journey for the world because the longest I had been with Sailing Yacht Freedom was the island of Bornholm. And now to have the chance to sail all the way to Cuxhaven wasn't something I was going to miss. The morning we started this long sailing journey, I didn't have that high expectations. Actually, I don't think that I had landed with a thought of how big this epic journey was going to be. It wasn't until we had been sailing for an hour or two that it really sank in how far we're going, and it's a long way to Cuxhaven.
When it comes to Per, this was the first time on board Freedom, but he had a boat experience and it turned out that he always had energy when needed, day or night sail.
Beside us three gentlemen aboard, we also had some honorable experience. Both my parents have spent so much time at sea, I mentioned in part 1 of this video series. My dad joined his first cargo ship when he was only 17, and on the 7 seas he met my mom. They worked side by side and experienced many countries together.
We filled the boat with food and beverage, talked about safety routines and what we would expect on the first week of the trip. They promised good weather for our start, no wind though, but it was southeast right in front of us, better with no waves and wind than a hard struggle in the beginning. We were still in the archipelago of Kalmar Strait and came out to Demmans lighthouse. It is known to look like a submarine from a distance, especially in this kind of calm summer days like we had. During the end of the Cold War, a lot of phone calls was made to report U-boat seen outside of Påskalvik, but when they asked for its position, the Swedish Marine knew it was just the spooky lighthouse seen again. Our goal was to make it to Utklippan, a small, remote, rocky island way out in the Baltic. For the weather was going to change towards the weekend. We stood up at 0600 and my parents arrived an hour later. Water tanks was filled and we then started our journey. We passed Ölands bridge and noted that it will be years until freedom will go under this bridge again. A special feeling, anxiousness mixed with excitement. We waved to Kalmar Castle with the mainland on its side and Öland's south tip on the other. We were now leaving the Kalmar Strait. Calm water took us 73 nautical miles to our destination. It took us 14 solid hours with the engine and 2 last hours with sails up to arrive at our rock. Utklippan is an old safe haven for ships with its carved out channel. I guess they used dynamite to clear a deep enough harbour and divided the small island in half. The big lighthouse is suited on one of them. We decided to take turns writing in Freedom's logbook. This part is what Christian wrote about this trip.
Freedom passed under the Ölands bridge for the last time in at least 3 years. It feels a bit funny, I must say. When we had passed Bergkvara, Kalle and Kenneth tried out the new wind rudder and it didn't turn out first. But it got better the longer they went at it. They are talented, father and son, who figured out how it would be. We arrived at Utklippan around 11 p.m., tired and a little hungry. Sailor Bejan.
A good night's sleep and breakfast on the concrete pier. We started off with sails up, but it was southwest winds and under 5 meters per second, so it came down a few times. My mother cooked us sausages, which was too much for Christian and Per, who fell both asleep after. They slept almost all the way to Bornholm, and at a total of 124 nautical miles we arrived on the island of Bornholm and tied on Denmark's guest flag up in the mast. During the afternoon we looked on the weather predictions for the day after. Strong winds and more from the east. Perfect. Because it was a perfect change since we first was promised wind against us. In the harbour of Allinge my parents left us. They are now taking the speed ferry to the mainland and a bus home. Now we are just 3 on Freedom. One night at Allinge cost 150 kroners back then, about 20 Canadian dollars. We found a perfect pub for us called Rökeriet. We played games there and probably drank too many Danish beers. Went to bed at 2 in the morning, and our plan for the next day is to make 100 nautical. No one was crabby, but at 06:30 in the morning, after 4 hours of sleep, well, that is early for most of us. Off we went, all 3 of us, and untied Freedom for another full day at sea. Our plan was to make a lot of distance in these strong winds. Denmark's mainland would be great, but I had a feeling that the strong winds will later push us towards Germany, and I was right. I remember that we had a disappointment when we realized that we couldn't make, and more did we turn towards Germany, for a thunderstorm was hunting us. Closer it came, and it was now pretty dark. But we couldn't complain about our speed. We made 7 knots, and quite often up in around 9.5. Big ships around us, stronger winds, almost 11 meters per second, and with 2 meters waves made it tricky and tiring. I called up Christian and Per when I saw the coast of Germany for the first time. The thunderstorm had arrived, and with it light rain to begin with, and then it changed to heavy rainfalls. We could now only see 10 meters ahead of us in this cold rain. Stralsund Strait had a strong current against us, and I had to push the engine harder. 2000 turns normally gives us 6.5 knots, but now only 3.8. We passed sand dunes on both sides, and a bigger Coast Guard vessel followed us for a while. We arrived at Bahnhof guest harbour in Germany, and a very tired crew. A happy and exciting surprise was seen when we looked for an empty slot to moor. The famous adventure boat called Ariel 4, number 4, was docked just on the other part of the docks. Per looked for a book to read 2 days earlier and started to read one of the books about Ariel's travel around the world. What a stroke of luck! Just in the same harbour we found Ariel 4. A well-known boat for sure, and we walked over there to say hello to the crew. We got invited for coffee and proudly got my book signed by them. They also gave us some tips for our voyage south. We three ended this long day with a Jurassic Park movie in a cabin, and I'm sure we all slept very good that night. Now a total of distance of 204 nautical miles behind us. The following day we stood up at 9 o'clock. This was our 4th day since we left Påskallavik. This day was not a normal day, for it was Christian's birthday. He turned 33. This harbour didn't take credit or debit cards, and the harbour fee had to be paid. But after some flirting with the old harbour master, he drove us to the store to take out some money, and as a secret surprise, me and Per bought Christian a cake and a gift. Christian's instructions was not to open the fridge to peek, and we made him wear a birthday hat for a special day, a yellow fisherman's hat. When I read the logbook after all these years, I really don't remember. Like in this harbour, I got bit by a dog. Holy, I don't remember that, but no wonder. A lot of healthy, great tasting water was involved. So maybe it was a little bit blurry. Hooray! Cake and Christian's gift from us was a bottle of Bacardi.
Det här är dagen efter min födelsedag. Här står Pelle och hjälper till att styra lite. Jag får ursäkta mig för att jag harklar mig lite. Men ja, vi mår inte sådär kanonish idag.
Nej,
eller vad säger han, kaptenen?
Nicht perfektisch.
För det är... Ja, jag vaknade i all hast klockan 11 och la ut på inom en halvtimme.
Tunghäftig.
Så nu är klockan 10:12.
At 10:55, someone on board woke up. Then I flew up and wondered what time it was. Lucky for us, the boat was already ready to go on this unplanned delay. We were already out of the harbour outlet at 11:30. A noticeable cursed hangover would thump in time with the hard blows of the waves that hit against Freedom's hull. That morning the current was not so strong between the sandbanks, and we were able to get a good distance out before we got the winds against us. On the charts, it showed 2 to 6 meters depth on the sides, and that you should drive almost 2 hours before you can turn off towards Kiel and our destination. Then other boats started to turn off way earlier, and after a while we did the same, but with the sonar running to be able to follow the soft hills of the sandbanks under the keel. Freedom is a good boat for taking waves. We cut them like a knife through butter. We kept almost 5 knots, although the wind was up to 6 meters per second headwind. It took 6 hours before we reached the separation lines and changed direction to be able to go more 90 degrees over them. We saw maybe 20 ships on the plotter, but around 4 boats visually. When we sailed along the coast of Denmark, we could raise the sails, and I didn't reef the sail. Maybe it was stupid, because it started to blow a lot when it got dark. The whole plan was really to head for Kiel. We instead ended up in Denmark again, and the ferry camp Rødbyhavn. What was most troublesome on this stretch was not the wind, but the buoys and markers that we did not see on my charts, but which appeared out of the darkness all of a sudden, and we were twice on a collision course. It could just have been fishing nets or other equipment in the water. Once arrived, we lowered the mainsail inside the protective walls of the pier, with ferries passing and waves crashing against the outside of the pier. We were tired, and we're finally able to dock alongside a commercial dock for work barge. Here we have a shore power, and we can rest after 14 hours traveling. The waves hit the pier aggressively the rest of the night. The morning after, we got the news that a sailing boat during the night lost its captain. A woman fell in the dark water and the waves took her. We felt lucky and grateful for a safe harbor here in Denmark. We have done 260 nautical miles. We left Denmark with some wind, but it calmed down and we had a safe and nice crossing to Kiel and Germany. Christian was sleeping and I got tired, so Per steered Freedom with a firm hand. The weather was fine and there were no boats, just us on the south side of the Baltic Sea. When we got closer to Kiel, the steering wheel was quickly handed over to the captain, Kalle, me again. We pulled into a small guest harbour right next to the locks and had a beer to celebrate this important milestone on the journey.
Jaha, då är vi i Kiel. Det här är en stor händelse i Freedoms liv och mitt liv, absolut. Känslomässigt laddat. Det är porten ut mot världen och jag har sett fram emot det här i säkert 10 år. Så det här är mycket kul. Vi har haft rätt tuff tid vissa dagar, men det här är kul, verkligen. Så skål! Skål, gott håll! Skål, Bergen!
Skål!
We woke up at 6 and were supposed to leave at 8 in the morning with the first opening. But talking to the sluice guard, he confirmed that the channel gates opens at first sunlight. We hovered outside the gates, surrounded with 7 other sailing boats waiting to enter. However, no other Swedish boats were on sight, just us. The lock was only a small lift up in the channel, and not aggressively high if you compare it to the Göta Kanal or something like that. That also is a man-made channel. Since we didn't have a clue if the sluice was lifting us up or down, and then all of a sudden we were on the other side, we were maybe raised 1 meter up. The locks are equipped with pontoons that most people moored against. We choose to keep the dampers through the rings and back to the boat. It felt safest right then, to be able to control everything that could happen. but nothing really happened with no drama. Once on the channel, everything went at leisurely pace. We steered behind several boats, some passed us, and sometimes we had to steer away to give more space to the bigger ships that came. As usual, the AIS helped us with early warnings if a larger vessel was hiding behind a bend. The sides of the channel were abundantly green, lot of trees, and surprisingly little industry.
Christian, I have to ask you, what kind of impressions did Kiel Canal give you?
Arriving at the Kiel Channel was pretty cool. The first you see is a World War II U-boat on the shore. One thing that I always will remember is when we passed a big cargo ship in the channel, then you truly know how small you are.
We stopped halfway and refilled some diesel and oil. Each ate a pizza, and then it was time to drive away again. The entire trip, if you exclude the 1.5 hour stop, it was 8 hours on the canal. The entire lock for lock in and lock out cost 18 euros for my size of boat.
Nu är vi framme på andra änden av Kiel. Vi kör till 8 timmar. Nu har precis blivit molnigt, men vi har haft bra väder som sagt. Och fortfarande möter vi stora, vi kallar det tankers. Det är den största vi mött hittills. Så nu ska vi lägga till, gå iväg och duscha och dricka lite öl.
The last guest house in the canal cost us 9 euros for a night. It was beautiful located, and pedestrian streets are really beautiful here. We woke up after another evening with tasty beverage, song and laughter. Cleaning up ourselves and the boat. Looked at the tide schedule. Yes, that is right. Tide. We were not on the sluice out from brackish waters, actually out to salty waters in the North Sea. We arrived in Cuxhaven after only a few hours of motor driving. We had a 6 second headwind and still drove at 8.9 knots. Imagine what tides can give you an extra speed. Normally I would have driven about 5.5 knots with this headwind, but 8.9 knots in this river, I was surfing.
Finally, we reached the end of the journey in Cuxhaven. First thing that I got to experience was the tidewater. I've never experienced that big of change with the water levels before. And in June of 2011, I should return to freedom, and that trip went to Mediterranean and Italy.
We arrived at Cuxhaven, Germany. Lots of other visiting boats. Pontoons being lifted up and down with the tide. Sheltered harbour from all the winds. Plus the harbour guard was happy to check on the boat from time to time. My plan was to leave freedom here for 4 weeks or even the winter months if I didn't manage to get more holidays before autumn. Freedom had never been completely unattended before. It was 10 o'clock the day after and a cleaning day. Everyone got different jobs. Christian took care of drying, Per did laundry and then helped cleaning outside of the boat. After well done cleaning, we ended up in a few different pubs to celebrate our last day together. However, I had to ask a policeman in a car about the direction for a good pub. We found some Spanish-inspired pub. There we drank mojitos that were made according to all the rules for the art of the drink. In a few hours we have to go up, we said, but we stayed. We took the train home. We solved it with 3 train changes to get all the way to Kalmar. Now it was time to start working again, and I needed to drive up to Forsmark nuclear station to squeeze out a little bit more travel money. Working again after almost 2 weeks of sailing felt strange, but it was good to get some distance from the trip
and be able to digest all the impressions that we got, all the new things we learned, as well as recharge the batteries for the next time to go. For my own part, the sluicing and leaving the canal out onto the Elbe River and the North Sea was the coolest part of this episode. Stay tuned for the next one.